Hello, good evening, fourth grade. Thank you for joining me tonight for a bedtime story. I have chosen for you Arthur and Gwen, an original tale of young Camelot by John Koons. In the days of old, long, long ago, there were kings and knights and castles. There were princesses and dragons. There was heraldry and magic, and there was a boy named Arthur. Arthur was the adopted son of Sir Ector and brother to Sir Kay, both brave knights, and it was with them that he went to the tournament. It was a festive place for knights to joust and boast of their bravery. "I will one day be a knight," said Arthur to Sir Kay. "You, a knight?" laughed Kay. "And I suppose you're going to be a king as well, hey?" He poked Arthur with his metal glove. "You're barely even a squire. You can hardly carry your shield, and you don't even know how to use it to defend yourself." Kay snatched his shield from Arthur. "Well, Grunt, be at it. Go along and rescue a princess or something." Kay was still laughing as Arthur wandered off into the woods to be alone. Inside the tent of King Leo de Grant's were a magician conjuring birds out of a hat and a minstrel playing many different instruments at once. Staring at the ground with Guinevere. She was the king's daughter, a princess, and she was completely bored. She had come along to the tournament not to watch silly performances or knights battle, but to be a knight in battle. Guinevere thought she was as tough and brave as any knight and sought adventure. Guinevere had finally had enough. "I need some fresh air." "No strolling off, milady," said her handmaiden Fiona. "I promise," replied Guinevere. But outside she spied the woods and headed straight for them, thinking to find an adventure. She had promised not to stroll off, but she wasn't strolling. She was walking very fast and skipping. Arthur was sitting in a tree, thinking that his brother was right. He was too small and weak to be a knight. No one would ever take him seriously. As he thought, he heard a sound. He turned and saw a girl frolicking down the path. Now was his chance to be a true knight. "Who goes there?" he shouted. The girl jumped, then looked up at him. "I am Princess Guinevere. Who are you?" Arthur hopped down from his branch and bowed. "I am Arthur, princess." He laughed. She wasn't really a princess. "Squire to Sir Kay, I shall protect you from these woods, my lady." "You don't look as if you could protect a rabbit," said Guinevere with a smirk. "Oh, yes, I could," Arthur challenged. "Not if I wanted to take it from you," Guinevere dared him. She grabbed a rock and held 2 fingers above it, then tossed it at him. "There's your rabbit. Defend it." Arthur caught the rabbit, but dropped it as Guinevere jumped on him, sending them both tumbling to the ground. They struggled until Guinevere pulled Arthur's hair. He yelped, grabbing his head, and Guinevere triumphantly captured the rabbit. Arthur sat up and looked gloomily at her. "I could not best even you, a girl. I shall never be a knight." Guinevere was pleased with her victory, but didn't want to be mean. "Well, I thought you were very noble," she said. "You did?" Arthur asked. "Certainly, and I did pull your hair, and that's cheating, because I don't think knights really do that." Arthur was beginning to feel better. My friends call me Gwen, said Guinevere. They shook hands. Everyone calls me Arthur, except my brother. He calls me Grunt. Grunt? Gwen laughed. She stood up and bowed. Pleased to meet you, Sir Grunt. That's awful. Actually, said Arthur, smiling, I don't mind it when you say it. Gwen smiled, too. But unbeknownst to Arthur and Gwen, there was someone else in the woods, and he was not smiling. They could not see him. He'd made sure of that. He had been watching Arthur for some time. He stroked his long white beard and wondered why he, who could see into the future, had not foreseen this. The time was not right for them to meet, not yet, but he remained quiet, still, and listened. Perhaps, Gwen said to Arthur, you are better at other things. I challenge you to a foot race. Arthur smiled broadly. Here was something that he could win, for he was fleet of foot. I accept your, he began. But Gwen was off like a flash through the woods. Arthur was soon close behind. Gwen looked back and taunted. You need to be faster to catch me, sir. Oomph! Gwen struck something hard and was knocked to the ground, and Arthur toppled on top of her. Arthur and Gwen looked up to see the biggest, ugliest, dirtiest man they'd ever seen. Well, well, he said in an unpleasant voice. What have we here? Beyond him was a whole group of unsavory-looking men. Thieves, they looked, here to prey upon the crowds at the tournament, and Arthur and Guinevere were smack in the middle of their secret camp. There were 9 of them in all, equally dirty and ugly. The big one, their leader, gulped. Look, men, a young lad and lass out for a stroll. The thieves laughed. Come to give us all your valuables then, are you? Arthur and Gwen rose shakily to their feet. Arthur stepped bravely in front of Gwen to shield her. We mean you no harm. We shall just be on our way. Gwen stepped to Arthur's side. In a firm voice, she said, I am Princess Guinevere, daughter of King Leodegrance of Camelot. I am accompanied to the tournament by great knights, and woe to you if any harm befalls me. Arthur rolled his eyes. Gwen, he hissed, stop it. But I really am a princess. Well, princess, said their leader, you can't have your spilling our beans, so we'll have to do away with you both. But first, I'll be taking those jewels. As he reached for Gwen's necklace, Arthur said calmly, I think not. The bandit laughed and turned towards Arthur, who kicked him hard in the shin. The thief hollered in pain, grabbed his leg, and toppled over. Another one tripped over him as he tried to grab Arthur. He ducked and crashed into a third, who fell on top of them both. Gwen grabbed a frying pan and whacked an unlucky bandit on the head. Arthur shouted, Well done, princess! That's 4 down, she declared. What now, Sir Grunt? The remaining thieves took up their weapons and started towards them. Run! cried Arthur. They ran, the 5 angry cutthroats on their tails. Once out of sight, they hid behind a tree, and Arthur grabbed a nearby sapling and pulled with all his strength until it was bent in half. When one unwary thief, huffing and puffing, approached the tree, Arthur let go, smacking the thief and sending him flying. Sir Arthur, you are a fine knight indeed, Gwen said. Arthur grinned and motioned to keep running. The 4 remaining crooks chased them all the way to the lake. Arthur and Gwen waded in, hoping to cross, but it was no use. They were trapped. The bandits slowly approached them with their weapons at the ready. Just as they were about to strike, the ground underfoot began to tremble. And in the middle of the lake, a fountain sprang up. They all stood transfixed as up from the center of the fountain stretched a lady's arm, holding a great sword gleaming in silver and gold. The sword flew through the air right into Arthur's hand. Then the mysterious arm and fountain sank back into the water and vanished. As if the sword was made just for Arthur, he somehow knew exactly what to do. He faced the gang of now frightened cutthroats. One of them charged him. Arthur swung his sword with both hands and sliced the other's sword neatly in half. The thugs stared at it wide-eyed for a moment, then ran off screaming like a little girl. Another let loose an arrow straight for Arthur's head. Arthur swung around with his sword, and the arrow bounced harmlessly off it. The thieves were scared stiff. With a wink to Gwen, Arthur said, "And now, princess, your loyal knight shall finish them." He howled and ran at them. They dropped their weapons and ran off, except for one who fainted dead away. Arthur and Gwen laughed and cheered. Gwen took the sword from Arthur. "Kneel, Arthur." He knelt on one knee. She stood straight and tall before him. "You have acted with bravery and nobility," she said formally. "You have defended me and do me honor. By my birthright as princess, heir to the king of Camelot, with this magical sword, I hereby dub thee knight." She lifted the heavy sword and touched him once on each shoulder. "Arise, Sir Arthur of Grunt." Arthur took the sword and held it high in triumph. And then Guinevere kissed him. Arthur was so stunned that he let go of his sword, and as he did, it leaped out of his hands and soared off into the sky, higher and higher, until finally it was gone. Sir Arthur of Grunt and Princess Guinevere knew that the time had come for them to go their separate ways. "Thank you for making me a knight," said Arthur. "I'm sure we'll see each other again someday." "Yes," she agreed. "You'll appear one day at the castle door and ask for my hand." "Me? Marry a princess?" said Arthur. "You're right," she said, smiling. "I'll be a queen by then." "Well then, I shall need to be a king. King Arthur and Queen Guinevere." They laughed. "I shall never forget this day," said Arthur, "or you." "Nor shall I forget you," said Gwen. "Ah, but forget you shall," said a voice from nowhere. Suddenly, standing there, they saw a man with a long white beard, dressed in long, flowing robes. "I am the wizard Merlin, guardian of the future. I am also your guardian, Arthur. I watch over you because you have a great destiny to fulfill, as do you, Princess Guinevere." "So you did all of this then?" said Arthur. "Indeed not. I gave you no help, for you needed none." "What about the magic sword?" Gwen asked. "That was not I, but the Lady of the Lake, a powerful being who rules the waters. Pay heed. Your destinies are intertwined. You must meet at the proper time, and so cannot be allowed to remember this day. I shall cast a spell that will make you forget. I'll never forget, shouted Arthur. Nor I, added Guinevere. No, not entirely, 'tis true, offered Merlin calmly. You will not forget much of what you found here today, your confidence, your bravery, your cleverness. But all else, the sword, the battles, each other, even me, you will know only in your dreams. So go, be off. Your families await you. Gwen and Arthur shared a final hug and promised they would not forget. But as they walked in opposite directions, Merlin cast his spell, and they did forget. Back at the tournament, Arthur somehow felt grand. His brother said, "Where had you gotten off to, Grunt?" "Just a walk in the woods," said Arthur. "And that's Sir Arthur of Grunt to you." "Sir Grunt, is it?" He threw his shield at Arthur, who caught it smartly, twirled it around, and held it firm in defense position. Before Sir Kay could speak, a group of shady characters passing by saw Arthur and for some reason bowed nervously. "Good day, sir, and pardon us, sir," they said, and then scampered quickly away. Arthur was confused, but said to Kay, "Even they know a sir when they see one." "You know, Sir Grunt," said Sir Kay, "there may be hope for you yet." The end. Thank you for letting me share that with you tonight, and it fits right into your studies this year of medieval history and castles and knights. And I have one little thing I'd like to share with you before we say goodnight. It's called Fly Your Flag. How do you know when the king is in residence at his castle? The flag is flying over the castle. It tells everyone he's at home. The Bible says when Jesus comes to live in your heart, he brings his flag with him. It flies over your life, showing everyone the king is at home. What is Jesus' flag? G.K. Chesterton called it the gigantic secret of the Christian. What is it? Joy. In Isaiah 51:3, joy and gladness will be found in her, thanksgiving and the sound of singing. So 4th grade, go tuck yourself in, enjoy a good night's sleep, and sweet dreams.